map myself. I'm a Sagittarian. I'm born in Utah. I've kind of been this Western universe, so I'm under like this between Capricorn, opposite Gemini, air sign. So yeah, I'm a fire element, and so this like jumping, mutable transition from fall into winter, like
Mm-hmm.
that first year of life, all that kind of stuff. What does that mean to you? What is a birth chart? How do you see it astrologically? Based on geography, time of
Yeah.
day, all those things. Like, how can someone really, in a simple way, if possible, like make
Mhm.
sense of what a birth chart is to your
Yeah.
understanding?
So I mentioned the term birth map. That was what a teacher of mine, a good friend of mine actually, and she became my teacher. She follows the 13 moon calendar, which comes from the Toltec tradition, Mayan tradition. A lot of ancient civilizations use the 13 moons, right? That's more in sync with the natural cycles. And so she also is an incredible astrologer when it comes to mapping birth charts. And she explained it to me that basically, wherever you're at on the planet, if you were to look out at the horizon, you've got your midway, this line that goes through your chart, and everything at the top is everything that would be above the hemisphere or the location of where you are. It's basically what's above the horizon. Everything below, right, opposite your sun sign, opposites are all underneath the horizon. They're on the other side of the planet. You can't see them. So you're looking at a map of the sky is basically all it is. You're looking at where the planets, the moon, and different aspects would be at the time of birth. And so those are the frequencies that are directly affecting you as you come into this world. And I personally, I'm not an astrologer, but I've always loved and been drawn to this. I think as an Aquarius, it kind of makes sense, and I just want to believe like, yeah, this is it. This feels real to me, right? And so over the years, I've noticed that different sun signs, which is usually what people say, oh, I am a Pisces, I am a Virgo, I am a, Aquarius, I am a Sagittarius. Like your sun sign is where the sun was, that's the season. And it does, like you said, correlate to an element. So there are certain aspects that people share or characteristics that people share that are in those signs. And it's everybody is different. Everybody's different. So when you look at somebody's birth chart or when somebody says, this is my sign, you want to be able to look at all of it. You want to be able to look at the moon, which is our emotional body. The moon rules our emotional reactions, how we process our relationships. Venus rules our love life.
Well,
And
real quick
so,
on the moon, why? Because it,
yeah,
it moves our oceans, right? As the poles, like it
yes,
rises and changes the tide. So that emotional energy is because it like controls the water.
the
Like,
water, exactly. And our bodies are made up of water. When people talk about the full moon and everybody's got this crazy energy, well, yeah, all that water in your body's mixed up, wanting to do something, go somewhere, right?
right.
And so, and especially, even with women, our menstrual cycles sync up. Usually, if you are somebody who has a healthy menstrual cycle, you're going to sync up to the cycles of the moon, whether that's the new moon or the full moon, depending on the season, depending on lighting. Our hormones, our blood, our whole endocrine system, our nervous system, everything is affected by the sun, the moon, and also these larger cosmic bodies outside of our, immediate surroundings. So,
So
yeah,
for
the
for
birth
long
chart.
term relationships, only date women that live in the dark. Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
You don't want to feed them any light. We're like house plants. You got to water us and give
Oh,
us light.
oh,
Jeez.
okay. I'm just trying to protect all the men out there. Just kidding.
Oh my goodness, that was good. Yeah, and so everybody's different. Like my point was going to be that you have your sun sign, you have your moon sign. Your rising really relates to the whole generation. That's going to
Okay.
be your peers, right? And it's the lesson that you came to this life to learn. You're born during this time, and it's going to be the challenges that your generation has to face, kind of as a collective. So some of these aspects of the planets and stuff will affect more than just you personally. But the moon and the sun together is a very personal thing because the sun is your personality. It's how you shine in the world. It's you think of that outward light. The moon is the emotional. And then there may be different oppositions or trines, and there's so many things that you really have to learn about the houses and how each of those have an effect on certain areas of your life. So if you think of things like your career or your relationships, the way that you handle yourself in public versus private, are you self-driven, or are you somebody that does better receiving direction? Like, all of that's going to come into play. So when you really get into astrology and you look at the different aspects and you see what each of the planets represent, the energy, and then you look at how you show up in the world, you'll see the correlations clear as day. I mean, it's kind of hard to deny that all of this is affecting us, on these levels. So
Absolutely.
it's pretty
Yeah.
rad.
I mean, the further I went down this rabbit hole initially, the more I was like, okay, maybe, but, I want, like, there's this tendency to just deflect. Nah, I can't, I don't necessarily want to look at myself from the negative perspectives, basically. But then,
Mm,
like, when I really started to it's easier for us, I think, sometimes to see it in the positive light, right? So even though my inability for me as a Sagittarian, the jumping fire, the like, I get bored. I want to move on from this to that.
yeah, you need
Reading a
adventure.
Yeah, reading a book from A to Z was like the first time I did that was like amazing. It's like I need a trophy for doing something like
You need
that.
a medal.
But I'm it's representative in my life, right? This tendency lived from Utah to California, back to Utah to Arizona to Utah to Denver. Like, I never stay in one place for too long, and the like longer I got into my own egoic part of my life, like where I was really like on my own self will instead of leaning in on these better philosophies that kind of keep me grounded, keep me more centered, make me more aware of who I am. Those tendencies kind of get way accentuated, like way out of bounds. And this is just
Mm.
my experience. So the
Well,
latter part of my life, it became more apparent. Now I can see it and utilize it more intentionally, like we were talking
yeah,
about.
yeah.
You know, it's not necessarily anything more to the way I understand it as in my nature. That part of me that's going to be a part of me no matter how I experience life after birth. So
Yep.
that's.
And as a Sagittarius, let me ask you then,
Mm-hmm.
because you're talking about that being a fire sign, which we know, yes, there's this force behind the fire, this like spark, this go, right? And I always think adventure. Sagittarius is the archer. So my
Right.
question is, the archer likes to use that bow and arrow to take aim at a certain goal. Are you somebody who sets goals for yourself often? And how do you feel if you miss your mark or when you meet those goals? You mentioned wanting a
Oh.
trophy just for reading a book. So,
No,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah, kept getting my game. Um,
Hmm.
but it's a hunter aspect, right? So it's like I'll observe. I observe the universe, and I'll be very picky about, not necessarily to put it this way, but it is like the prey.
Hmm.
And sometimes like it's more sensational to go at things. The fun part is in the chase. The
Yep.
fun part is in um, setting the mark and seeing the
Yep.
goal. To actually attain those goals is, for me anyway, this is just my own thing. It's doesn't happen very often, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like but there's part of that I know is part of my own character. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of shortcomings within me as an individual. But as an archer, as a Sagittarian, I've kind of understood that it's very hard to match up with someone who wants to be as spontaneous as me, that, doesn't have to be so prepared going into certain things, that really wants to thrive on, the hot seat and between a rock and a hard place. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
want to be a lot more, um, it's almost like the sensation of life, that passion, the passion of the fire energy. I need
Mm-hmm.
to really have it be a part of my heart space in order to really want it enough to even go after it long enough. Because
Yeah.
the chase is so long. I'm not no
Right.
cheetah. I'm not like putting some sprint and then I'm out of breath in 5 minutes. I'm like the slow person behind the tree, scope you
Yep.
out from
A
this
hunter.
this
Taking
day,
it.
and then
Yeah.
until it's that right moment, I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah, and I can totally relate to that. As an Aquarius, I'm an air sign. And so there's this aspect where my brain is all over the place all the time, right? It just wants to do these things. But I also have a Leo moon. So
mm-hmm.
Leo is another fire sign. And I get bored easily. If something's not going on, if I'm not getting that fun, fiery vibe in my heart space, then I got to go find something else to do. But the
Right.
Aquarius is similar in the sense, I'll have a million ideas, but following through, like I could dream up anything, but completing it from, start to finish is more of a Capricorn, Virgo, Earth thing, Earth
Right.
sign thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, an
Yeah. So,
Aquarius is fixed, right? That's a
mhm.
fixed
Fixed
winter
air.
energy and
Yeah.
air, and then you're also talking about that Leo or not Leo.
Yeah.
Well, Leo,
Leo
yeah, is
moon.
also a fixed, right? So that's
Right.
fixed fire. So
Yep.
it's a little bit more stubborn energy where like you're not going to receive it until you actually believe it, and then you're not going to get off that
Right.
pedestal of like base knowledge unless
Yep.
something really smacks you in the face. Um, but yeah, fixed energy. Well, just real quick. Uh,
Hmm.
so fixed, cardinal, mutable. What does that mean to you?
So fixed means like you use the word stubborn, and I love that. It's very much a solid energy. It's not going to waver. It's not going to change for anybody, right?
Hmm.
Mutable is more flowy, more, I think of water. I think of things that can change, transmute, transform. So there is, depending on like a mutable sign, depending on all the other aspects around it, the conditions, the environment, they may take a different approach in a situation or be affected by a situation differently at any point. Cardinal signs, I'm not as familiar with like, what that personally means. I don't have a lot of cardinal signs in my chart even. I think that it's more of like a pattern, like there's a system where it comes around in these cycles and it's like, okay, this is here, this is there, that's over here, right? So I hope
Hmm.
that makes sense. It's
Yeah, I mean, tell me if this makes sense to you then, because like the way that I was introduced to it is obviously we have the four elements. So there's the four and then the three cardinal, fixed, and air. So this cycle as we move through the four seasons too,
Mhm.
winter, fall, spring, summer, like the cardinal energy in relative to like breath work.
Mm.
That's how I can best relate it. Is that the cardinal energy is kind of it's taking in new energy
Mhm.
to come into spring, right? So
Mhm.
as the Aquarian, this what's the next zodiac after Aquarius?
Pisces.
So yeah, that water energy then is this transition, melting of the snow, the water trickling off the top of the thing, but it's like Earth receiving its energy, right?
Mm.
So the
Mhm.
Piscean water energy, the cardinal energy of it is taking into a season. So
Mhm.
it's an in breath.
The beginning of that. Yeah.
That fixed energy sits in the middle of any given season.
Mhm.
So at that point, they kind of sit at a standstill either at the top of a season or after a mutable sign at the bottom of a season.
Mhm.
But generally, it's just in a fixed state, not receiving or giving. Just kind of like they can be the main stage of, you know,
Mhm.
of their paradigm. And then
Yeah.
the mutable ends up becoming okay, now we're done with this season. Let's get it out of us. And that's that out breath. They're like, okay, I have all this stuff, but I don't want it. Like, let's give it away, move us forward. So that's what the mutable
I
means
love that.
is
That's,
it's transformation, taking. So a match from a mutable sign with a cardinal sign tends to be really good um, in terms of the give and take. Okay, if you give something to
right.
me, I'll make it do something.
Yeah.
And not just for us, but for like we want to use that Aquarian energy now to utilize it for a greater whole.
Yeah.
But then you also have that elemental matchups, which is why these zodiac relationship structures become so interesting. So that's why I think like the longer we go into astrology and zodiacs and the matchups of things, that this can really start to make sense in the long
Mhm.
run. So
Absolutely.
it's
I'm
not
gonna
some
see if my
surface
cat's
level
trying.
bullshit that we pull out of a little cookie when we get.
It's big stuff. You reminded me. I love that description of using the breath. You get
Hmm.
in there, you're there, letting it go. And thinking about like just again compost. Compost is on my mind a lot right now. Yeah, how do we use this to set the stage for the next space, to come in more supported.